The world tells us a lot about how to be okay. It tells us what to do with our emotions. It tells us how to be happy. It tells us what success is. It tells us all these things. And one thing I've been researching recently is the idea of what did the Bible actually teach about emotions? What is the biblical perspective about emotions? And especially as a man, growing up, I generally wasn't taught even the biblical perspective of emotions, let alone just how to deal with emotions in general. And I had to learn a lot of lessons, and I feel like I've gained this sort of emotional literacy. And today I want to kind of share with you some of the things that I've learned throughout the years, but also some of the things I've learned in just some of my recent studies. Let's start with Jesus, right? The first place or instance that pops into my mind when I think of Jesus with emotion, I think of Jesus when he's going to go raise Lazarus from the dead, right? He has to wait a few days because he has to let Lazarus die, basically, which is kind of wild. But then he gets there, and he knows Lazarus is dead, and Lazarus isn't just a random person. It's not someone he doesn't know. It's a good friend of Jesus. Jesus knows Lazarus personally. So he sees Lazarus' family, right? And they're a little upset, which frankly, I kind of understand why you're upset. You're like, you could have done something. Why didn't you come sooner? I knew you could have, like, what are you doing? And he sees their sorrow and he sees their pain. And it says he had compassion on them. Now, compassion is kind of weird. We kind of think of it as an emotion. And in a way, it's like, it's an action that we can pour emotion into, right? Compassion, if you break it apart, it's actually two words, and the two words are common passion, and it means to suffer with. It's one of the beautiful things we can do with emotions, and one of the reasons I think emotions are actually very righteous and can be godly if we use them correctly. See, we are able to have compassion with others. We are able to suffer with others. We are able to be with them in that place and try to experience the same emotions, or actually grieve and experience the same emotions with them, right? That's one of the biggest things that emotions allow us to do. They allow us to connect actually on that level, right? Mentally. And so it said he had compassion on them. He didn't push it away. He didn't try and, encourage and cheer up. He had compassion with them. He grieved with them. He understood this is hurting, and we need to work through this. We need to have this pain. Like, this pain is all right. It's not all grief or fear or sadness is always bad, right? So that's my first example. Second example I really love is the Garden of Gethsemane. Now, the Garden of Gethsemane is in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and it's technically mentioned in John, but not really. It's like a side note where it's like, oh, they went to the garden and then he got betrayed by Judas. So it's not really in there. If you want to study it, it's in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Anyway, in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus is about to go on the cross, and he knows he's about to go on the cross. He knows he's about to go through all these tough trials. He knows he's about to get flogged, etc., right? He understands what he's going to go through, and he's having a moment of, Lord, I see this pain, and I don't want to do it. Like, he has the sorrow, and he says, can you take this cup from me, Lord? But let's back up real quick, right? So Jesus, he takes his disciples to the Garden of Gethsemane when he's amidst this, painful turmoil, right? And you could even argue maybe he stored up some of this emotion. And that's another lesson. We'll get back to that in a minute. But he goes to the garden with the disciples, and he says, hey, wait here. I'm gonna go over there. And then he takes Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, and he goes a little farther. And it says he was sorrowful, and he kind of let them know his sorrow, and they were watching over him. And then after a little while, he says, okay, I'm going to go a little further without you guys. I'm going to go be in isolation with the Lord. And then he lets the Lord know his sorrow, his pain, etc. And one of the things, there are so many things we can get out of this, but one of my favorite things is that he had isolation with God amidst community. You might be, what do you mean? Like, isolation with God? How do you have isolation and community? That doesn't make sense. But he had the community there to watch him, even though they did eventually fail, like they fell asleep, right? But even though there was a possibility of them failing, and he knew they would fail, I think it is a good lesson for us that even though our community can fail us, it is still good for them to be with us. It's still good for us to be in community, especially when we have those really harsh emotions. When we are in that turmoil, we need people to be able to see our reality without the lens of emotion. We need people to speak reality into our lives, right? And we need people to watch over us. In emotions, we cannot make good decisions. We need people to be there. So we need that community, right? But then we also, as Jesus had, we need that isolation. We need that isolation with the Lord so that we can work through our emotions. We work through emotions with community, and then we work through emotions with our Lord. We give them to Him. We don't just sit in them and simmer with them. Now we can simmer with them maybe for a little bit, but if you simmer them too long, then some things are going to get broken and you're not going to notice. If you try and push everything down, if you if you ignore all the warning signs on your car is going to start to break. And if you just ignore it, it's going to affect how you drive, right? What's under the hood is affecting how the car drives. And so when you're on your journey with emotions, you can let the light go on and be like, okay, next time I drive the car, I'm going to schedule an appointment. But if you got to go too long, it's going to influence how the car drives. And you have to understand that with emotions, you can't just push them down. You have to eventually go deal with them, go fix them, and go work through them. So that's just a few of the little lessons, right? Jesus had emotion. He was compassionate, right? He suffered with people. He had community. He made sure he had community, and then he also had isolation with the Lord. Another thing we must understand, right? Emotions are given to us for a reason, but they aren't always logical. Some people say like they aren't always valid, but emotions are valid. They happened for a reason. There was a response triggered, right? But emotions are also deceitful. Sometimes emotion might be triggered because you have an insecurity. It doesn't mean that that emotion is invalid. It just means that emotion isn't logical, right? You can have that emotion and it can come up and you be like, why is this coming up? Okay, I have this insecurity. That's why it came up. I don't want this emotion to come up. That's fine. And then you can go deal with it. So emotions can be good and can be used for good. And we must also understand that emotions can be used as indicators. They aren't always true, but they can indicate deeper problems and deeper things we need to go uncover. Another thing with emotions is, as I said, emotions are deceitful. They might not always make sense. Sometimes you'll try and dig into emotions and you're like, I have no idea why I'm feeling this way. Sometimes you'll feel sad and you're like, why am I feeling sad? And you might not be able to get to the root of it. And that's why community in the Lord is so important, because sometimes we'll have these emotions, and the key thing I would usually say is, hey, try and get to the root of it, try and work through it with someone, and sometimes you can't get to the root of it, and that's where community comes up. That's where being able to encourage comes up. That's where being able to give it to God comes, right? Another thing, this will be one of the last things I talk about, is emotions are good, but we must not be controlled by them. See, Jesus had all those emotions right before he was crucified. And I'm sure they had influence on his decision, right? They were influencing to try to not have him go on the cross. However, despite the influence, I'm not saying they didn't have any influence, because if you say they didn't have any influence, that's just wrong. Despite the influence they had on him, he did not let them direct his final decision and his actions. He took control and he said, I have these emotions, I'm giving them to the Lord, and I'm fighting with them. I'm working through them with the Lord. And in your life, you're going to have many times where you're having all these emotions and they're going to influence you. They're going to try and push you. There's going to be something broken in the engine that's trying to steer you in a different direction. And you're going to have to work through it. But sometimes you're also going to have to work through it, and you're going to have to understand that it is influencing you, and you have to turn a little left sometimes to keep straight on the path. You can't let emotions dictate your final actions and your outcomes. Those are just some of the key little insights from reading Gethsemane the past couple weeks. I can go deeper later, but this video is getting a little long. If you like it, I'm gonna try and make some more videos like this. And if you disagree or you have any other tips too, leave them in the comments. So, God bless.